Thank you. Um, I have Friends of the Nature Park presentation by Ms. Johnson first. Okay, then I have an old copy. Thank you. All right, then Ms. Rollo, thank you for being here to introduce the Fort Clark Middle School Band.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Superintendent Patton, and district administrators. First, I'd like to acknowledge our beautiful artwork here in the boardroom this month. On boards 1 and 4 on the sides, we have artwork by students at Sydney Lanier. Jessica Katz is the art teacher. On boards 2 and 3, directly behind our board members, we have paintings by Westwood Middle School students. Joy Gatshall is their art teacher, and behind me on boards 5 and 6, we have artwork from Rawlings Elementary, Christy Campbell, art teacher. I'd like to thank the art teachers and their students for sharing their beautiful artwork with us this month. Tonight's performance is brought to us by members of the Fort Clark Middle School Band under the direction of Chris Howes. Dr. Melissa Prado is here, principal at Fort Clark, also to join her students, so thank you for being here, Dr. Prado. The Fort Clark Band has a long-standing tradition of superior ratings, and this year has been no exception. Representing the band program this evening are 8th grade flute players Anastasia Carmichael and Brooke Taylor. Both Anastasia and Brooke were selected via audition for the 2025 All-State Middle School Band, and of course they were also selected for our very own Alachua County Middle School Honor Band, which performed last week. Both also received superior ratings on their flute solos at the FBA Solo and Ensemble Festival. They will each perform a segment of their solos. Brooke will play Siciliana and Giga by Handel, and Anastasia will perform Suite in B minor by Bach, and then they will close out the performance this evening with a flute duet, The Liberty Bell by John Philip Sousa. Please welcome Anastasia Carmichael and Brooke Taylor from the Fort Clark Middle School Band.
Thank you so, so very much for that performance. That was fantastic. My son has been playing flute for 8 years now, and I know how truly difficult those pieces were because I hear him practice. So that was truly phenomenal. Thank you so much. Dr. McNeely.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to say to the young ladies, I got it twice, coming in early, and now I can see why you received superior ratings. To the band director, thank you so much for preparing the students in the manner that you have. They were outstanding.
Mr. Vu.
And I'm going to tell you, as somebody who has done this before but didn't play nearly as well as you did, I just really do appreciate that. And even then, I could see, your first time in a crowd like this, in front of a school board, and I could see a little nerves, but you did it anyway, right? And you went up there, you pushed through it, and like I used to tell students, that's what courage really is. It's pushing past those feelings of fear and something that tells you don't want to do it, and you do it anyway. So just congratulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Oh, and I want to throw something in. So to you young ladies, I played the flute from 5th grade through 9th grade, and no way did I ever accomplish what you are. And it's also just amazing. I saw how many notes and where they were on your paper. I'm like, holy cow, they're going to play all that. And you did so lovely. So congratulations to our incredible teacher. Thank you. And our principal, thank you for being here supporting them too. But very lovely. And it's hard to think, you're only middle school. What in the world? What's going to happen when you get in high school? Wow, wow, wow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, and now Ms. Ward and Dr. Tessman with the ACEA union update.
Good evening, Chair Rockwell, board members, superintendent, and staff. I'm Carmen Ward. I'm the president of Alachua County Education Association, and I want to thank you for your service, and I am very pleased that we have this moment to talk about the State of the Union. Dr. Tessman and I were in Tallahassee last week. There are many bills that impact educators and children and workers in the state of Florida. And I don't want to speculate because we won't know where those bills go until the last minute, but we do have ed activists. We do have a website from the Florida Education Association that our members should go to. And we do have a political action, and I'm speaking to a board that I know are activists. I would like to invite you April 5th to Depot Park at 12 o'clock. There is an action called Hands Off, and it's hands off our democracy, really. And so I want labor to be there in a big way. So I'm saying to all the union members out there, or people that have union t-shirts, because some of you on the dais do, show up with your union t-shirts at Hands Off Our Democracy on April 5th. And that's a nationwide protest. And I would like to see people there. Locally, we have a bargaining update. Thursday, April 3rd, we return to the table with the board's bargaining team at 4:30. I believe everyone's going to be there. We are expecting a return for a salary proposal from the board's team. We did put a 3.5% proposal on the table. The ACA did. That was a counter to a 1% proposal that the board brought to the table last time. And that is the lowest teacher salary raise proposal in the state of Florida. If that would be the actual settlement, that would be the lowest in the entire state of Florida. That is not acceptable. So we are going to continue to push back. we have a union, and we are going to continue to apply pressure and push back against that proposal. So that's all I'll say about that.
Hello, I'm Crystal Tessman, the Service Unit Director and Vice President of Instructional for ACEA. I would like to read a definition of the union because sometimes it's easy to forget. A union is a group of employees who join together to advance common interests such as wages, benefits, schedules, and other employment terms and conditions. Joining together or acting collectively, workers represented by unions have a powerful voice that strengthens their ability to negotiate with their employer about their concerns. Unions in Florida need to have 60% membership to remain as the certified bargaining unit for whoever they represent. Currently, our teacher percentage is approximately 63%. We say approximately, it's a moving target constantly, and education support professionals are at about 53%. The state requires that we certify it separately or we would stay combined because we are one union. We do need about 100 ESPs to join before the end of April to avoid a costly and cumbersome vote. But there are options if we don't hit those numbers. But the best way to remain is to get more education support professionals to join. So if you're a member, get your friends. If you're not in the union yet, contact us and we'll answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tessman and Ms. Ward. Now on to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes that need to be made before we do that? Ms. Surden.
Well, I'll leave them. I'll come. So moved. Move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay. Move to adopt by Ms. Surden. Is there a second?
Okay.
Second by Dr. McNeely. Is there any discussion or public comment on the agenda? Hearing
I'll hold my question still.
Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the agenda? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. On to approval of the board minutes from March 12th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Surden. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Vu. Is there any discussion or public comment? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. On to board member and superintendent announcements. Ms. Surden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a quite eventful and busy week, or spring break week, at least I should say. And we're back in the saddle. I just wanted to share the two students that were in the honor band. They've since left, but I attended that, and it was a phenomenal concert. The middle schoolers actually, if you hadn't been told that they were middle schoolers, they sounded like high schoolers. They were very, very skilled, and their guest conductor from Marion County she did a phenomenal job, and the high schoolers were exceptional as well. So that was something that I really did enjoy. As Ms. Ward alluded to, I was also in Tallahassee the first couple days of spring break for our State Association for FSBA's Day in the Legislature. It was quite an eventful visit to the Capitol, and there are several bills that are very, very, very concerning. I think HB 1483. The way they do the school accountability grades, that bill has been proposed to change the grading structure. Instead of using the scale like for the Board of Education, how that's done now, it's kind of going to go to like an A through F, and they've got like so many will be A's, so many B's, but it's really going to, what's being projected. One of our colleagues, Dr. Sue Altansky from Monroe, has kind of applied the percentages to last year's school grades and has computed like how many districts would be schools would be an A, B, C, and D, and F, right? But she also made the mention that private schools that receive vouchers wouldn't be impacted by this because they're not part of the school accountability. It was a very impactful slide that she gave to the legislature, but that's one that we definitely should watch, as well as if you have not contacted our local legislators, do that, as well as others in the state, because of the one that's moving to make it easier to convert schools and them to take our assets is moving quite along kind of quickly. So that's one we should be concerned about, as well as the funding issues they seem to always keep coming to divert more funds from district-run schools to the voucher program, as well as to the charters, and not holding the charters and the voucher programs to the same accountability and other standards that district-one schools. So do pay attention to those and communicate with our legislators. That's not just for my colleagues, but that's also for the general public and our employees. And after that, we had our board of directors and our just some general, as part of that day in the legislature, they usually invite a speaker. And this year's speaker was the 2024-25 Superintendent of the Year, David Moore from Indian River. And he gave a phenomenal talk and encouragement to board members to support the work and to work in collaboration with their superintendent of how we can improve student achievement. And I want to just share just one of the slides that he had. The text from that is grounded in belief that every student can learn. And we have to align our actions with our belief and have a way of doing the work. It has to be systematic in order to be sustainable. And the why is important, but it's also how we do the work is even more important. So, and he spoke of, aligning our errors. And so I text Dr. Patton and I said to her, so I'm kind of seeing a theme here, a thread that's kind of running through this here. I call it the Miami-Dade way. So she and I had a little laugh about that. And then I concluded my week with attending the Consortium of State School Board Associations meeting in Atlanta with Mr. Vu and Dr. Rockwell. And I always, this is, I think, COSBA's third convening, and each one seems to get better. And the breakout sessions that I attended, we didn't all go to the same breakout sessions, which I always think is good, because we could kind of talk about things that we learned together when we come back together. But my focus was on, of course, finance, as well as improving what the board can do to positively impact student outcomes. And I went to one breakout session was with the Iowa Lighthouse Study on characteristics of highly effective school boards. And I think I've shared that article with you all, but they have updated that article as well as a book that they wrote. And the guy one of the presenters actually shared the PDF with us. And I have that if anyone is interested in that, I'll share it with you. And there was also a breakout session that you guys didn't go to, but you should really pull down the slides to it. It was the cost of choice, of school choice. There is definitely a cost to school choice to local districts. And here in Florida, our funding formula is different from other states. And the presenter was their CFO from the St. Louis, Missouri School District. And we have it bad here, but they got it worse there, in my opinion, because they split the funding based on the number of students, not just the type of students. So they have a 50-50 split between the students that are in district-run schools and that are in charters. And so they just take their state money, their local money, their title grants, and it gets split down the middle. So the district has more than 50% of the ESE students, but the charter school is getting 50% of the money. District has like 80% of the ESE students and getting 50% of the money. And maybe, but they're splitting everything straight down the middle. Even if they go for levies, they have a hard time with capital levies, getting those passed to improve their schools, keep maintaining them, not much less build them, because the parents that have students in charter schools are not inclined to vote because they don't, they say my kid's in charter school until they're not in charter school. So real good conference, and as I said, if you all want the PDF, let me know. I'll share it with you guys by email. Thank you.
Mr. Vu?
I'm going to echo everything Ms. Certain said. It was really informative, especially for me as the first time going, but my focus was a lot on procedure, safety, and then AI use, and that's just one of the things that really stuck out to me is that, in the past we hadn't been doing a great job when it comes to keeping up with trends on safety, but I really feel like right now we're doing a really good job of making sure we're ticking all the boxes and understanding what a safe campus means and making those improvements now. So that was really assuring that we're making all the right steps. But one thing I would love to push us on, I know we're not alone in this in the state of Florida, is an AI policy. We heard from a school district that pretty much from the get-go, right when ChatGPT came out, what was that? Fall 2023? Oh, seems like a lifetime ago already. But they immediately started working on it. What's acceptable use for staff? What's acceptable use for students? How can it be used by staff? How can it be used by students? And I think that's something we're really behind on. I think the state of Florida in general is really behind on it. And that was one of my biggest takeaways. And so, yeah, my spring break as well was spent, I guess, working for the district. I took my spring break for real last week. So if you were watching NBC Live Sports on Saturday night and you thought you saw me, it's because you did. I'm sorry, Mike Tirico. I'll leave it at that.
Did they share a sample policy?
All right. So as Ms. Certain said, we went to the COSBA, it's the Consortium of State School Boards Association Conference. I also attended a lot of AI sessions, different ones from Mr. Vu. There were quite a lot of AI sessions. And one of the things that struck me, the Director of Technology Initiatives for the Missouri State School Board Association, so over the entire state, he said that if we want our students to be successful in their futures as adults in the workplace, they need to know how to use AI ethically and responsibly in order to increase their productivity. And that really struck me because I think as educators, we have a tendency to want to push that kind of new technology aside. I remember when I was in high school and the TI-89 calculators first came out that could do calculus for you, that my calculus teacher did not want anyone to use them. Granted, there were only like 2 students in our entire class whose families could afford them at that time, but it was really controversial. And now my son does most of his math using CAD software in calculus. He doesn't even use the TI-89, he's using. So, and if you don't know how to use the software that everyone else is using to increase their productivity, you're at a disadvantage. So I think we as educators and as a school board and as district administration will need to shift our focus a little bit, because it's not necessarily, I mean, we need foundational skills in elementary school. That's why we don't allow calculators until middle school. But once we have those foundational skills, it's how we apply them, not necessarily how we do them. And so, we may need to make a shift, and in that vein, we need not just an AI policy, because policies are typically broad. They take a couple of months for us to go through the rulemaking process, and in a couple of months, ChatGPT's gone through 3 versions. Everything's changed in AI. But we also need district procedures that Dr. Patton and her team, I'm sure, are working on that can be more responsive to those changes. The other thing that I explored at COSBA was Holocaust education, and I didn't realize our state has a state-approved, completely free. Professional development is free, materials are free, fifth grade through 12th grade Holocaust education program that our district hadn't signed on to yet. So Dr. Patton was excited to hear about that too. So I was really glad that I went to that. I also attended some Music in Our Schools Month performances. One of the elementary school ones, it was Talbot, Idlewild, and Glen Springs. And did you know that some of our elementary schools have bands, like with guitars and bass and drums and keyboards? I did not know that. So that was really great and really exciting. And of course, our middle and high school honor band. I want to thank all of the band teachers because I know how much work putting that together was, and especially Miss Pizer and Mr. Graben, who organized the middle school and high school honor bands respectively, and all of the students and their families. Those performances, I think Ms. Surden said that the middle schoolers sounded like high schoolers. I'm going to go a step further. They all sounded like professional symphonies. The performance was absolutely spectacular. And I have to thank not just the students, their families, their teachers, but also our entire community for passing our 1 mill that makes music education programs in our schools as strong and robust as they are. And also art education I hope you all had a chance to look at some of this art. This is middle school art behind us. I'm flabbergasted. I would pay money for some of these at an art show. They're amazing. All right. And Dr. Patton.
Thank you. So a couple of things. I'm with you on the AI because we don't want to be behind. You're behind every day because of what's always happening. So it's in your definition of getting foundational skills, and from there, how do we best use it so that they have as much of an advantage as they leave us and exit out. Totally agree. So today kicks off our state testing for 10th graders. Started it off with us with writing today. And this is the first year that we have one-to-one computers. So we're very careful in what we're trying to do. We made sure to have an infrastructure test when we have that many devices and everything else. It was a joy to attend the MLK prayer breakfast the other day. Many of you were there also. And even happier to see and meet Samaya Daniels, who is a senior at Eastside that won the scholarship. And just what an amazing young woman. And for her to tell her story about her struggles with mental health and so articulately and how she's worked herself through that. So we're actually going to be having her help out with us. So good for her. And she's also had never played volleyball, started up, and wow, has a full ride to a college. So good for her, good for our athletic people, and her principal for passing her in the hall and having a talk to say, you should try volleyball. So you just never know how our kids get into different things. It was very exciting to attend the math challenge this past Saturday at Buchholz High School. You know, we're very big about sports and athletics, but when you can see those academic competitions too, and just watch them flip those papers over and they're ready to go, just the energy in the room was absolutely brilliant, you know, and how they all work together was just terrific. It was also an honor to be part of the Children's Trust, as many of you were, Saturday when they dedicated their new building. It's an exciting day for our county to have them have a permanent home now. And then also just the Florida new superintendents, this has been their 2 of 3 meetings for the new superintendents in Florida to be here in Gainesville. They're holding them at the FSHAA headquarters. So it's been fun to go and bring greetings and share some of the things that we're doing here in Alachua with the new superintendents. That's always fun. And then Jackie and Eitan have a video that just kind of puts some of our activities for our folks to see. So Eitan, thank you.
Ms. Surton?
Thank you. Dr. Patton, could you tell me why we don't print report cards anymore? Does anybody know that? I was asking. I didn't realize that we didn't send home a paper copy, that they were only available online.
So particularly with secondaries, they end up all over the streets, and then we get lots of calls because the kids don't take them home. They have them in their backpacks, and they then end up all over. We talked about this in DAC the other day about report cards. So any parent can go to a school and ask for it to be printed out for them if they need them. And the kindergarten or elementaries,
They're not
it's the
printed.
same.
That's actually who told me that they weren't printed as a primary school. So I was wondering if there was, I didn't even realize that they weren't.
Yeah, so I'm always happy to look back at that, but that's when I asked what it was, and that's actually kind of typical nowadays for schools because they mostly end up everywhere else, but not to say elementary, it doesn't, and then it's kids' information that's all distributed out.
Thank you.
Dr. McNeely?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me because my time really had passed. But I had attended so many different functions this week coming back. But the one school that I did not hear mentioned where I did attend, and that was Stephen Foster Elementary under the leadership of Carolyn Turner. It was exemplary opportunities for the students as well as the citizens to hear. And although the superintendent mentioned the Children's Trust, I wanted to say a little bit about that because I too was there and was just amazed at what took place with the student participation and our speaker. But I wanted the citizens to know that the Children's Trust provides services so that children are healthy, educated, supported, and safe. And they do an enormous job for the citizenry, the children especially, in Alachua County Public Schools. So I didn't want to sit here and not say something to the CEO, Marsha Kiner, and her team for such a wonderful opportunity on last Saturday. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. McNeely.
And just as an extra comment about that, they have their summer programming, the Children's Trust, so right now they're filling up spots. So if you are looking for something for your kids to do, some are free, some have very low cost to them, but again, this is a very fortunate county to have something like that, and those summer programming is unbelievable.
And I want to go back because I neglected, I forgot. I also attended the dedication of the Lincoln High School wall unveiling. And that was an incredibly moving event. My thanks goes out to the Lincoln High School Alumni Association for all of their hard work and dedication on that, especially Mr. Albert White. But that event, so I've got to say, I personally had an amazing high school experience. I loved my high school. I was in Miami-Dade County, and Dr. Patton knows my principal there and how wonderful he was. But I still cannot imagine 50 years later coming back wearing the school colors and being that excited and dedicated. The community that Lincoln High School forged, that has people still loving that school to that degree decades later, is what we should be striving for at every single one of our schools. It was very inspiring.
Alumni, right?
Yes. All right, and moving on to citizen input, Ms. Johnson.
Madam Chair, our first three speakers are Gina Rivera, Summer Lake, and Rebecca Reagan.
Good evening.
evening, board members, Madam Superintendent, and other members up on the dais. I want to start off by acknowledging that yesterday was Trans Day of Visibility. I want my trans and non-binary friends to be acknowledged and publicly supported, even if our state and federal government refuse to believe that these people exist and deserve the right to live peacefully and enjoy the same rights as everyone else. It's quite ironic that today is April Fool's Day, and I feel like the fool that continuously gets pranked by this district. Just when I think I'm going to get a decent wage and realistic salary offer April Fools, here's 1%. I saw the numbers that were provided at the latest bargaining meeting. Turns out, we are almost broke. We are losing students left and right to charter and private schools. I urge you to ask yourself, why are the students leaving? Are they leaving because student behavior in this county needs to be taken more seriously? Are they leaving because teachers feel unsupported and disrespected by years of growing workload while salaries stay behind? Are they leaving because our state has made it easier for families to qualify for vouchers towards charter and private schools? Are they leaving because families have lost trust in a board that continuously makes poor financial decisions? Maybe not all current board members, but certainly those who used to be up there. The answer to all of these questions is unfortunately yes. We have been spiraling for the last decade. It seems like investments were made that did not return the dividends that were expected. Instead of pivoting and adjusting, we were keep using our money irresponsibly, creating new sites and positions that bled money, praying it would fix our issues. I think it goes without saying that the plan has not worked. So what do we do now? How do we fix it? You've mentioned before that tough decisions must be made. I ask you today to share with us what those decisions are. How are you planning to fix it? I would like a plan. I want to know how you expect to get us paid what we deserve by eliminating frivolous spending and abandoning plans that have not worked. We can't continue to do the same thing we have and expect a different outcome. That is the literal definition of insanity. We need to get out of the hole that we've been in, regardless of who was responsible for it, and move forward. You mentioned weeks ago that we needed to be number one in something. It seems like we're number one in something. We're the county with the lowest salary increase offer in the state. How shameful. Please share with us how you plan to move us forward and stop the bleeding before it's too late. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Summer Lake. I'm 10 years old and I attend Glen Springs Elementary School. Both my parents are teachers and my mom has 3 jobs, and that's not okay. Teachers should be paid a living wage while giving students the gift of learning. My teachers are important. Imagine a world with no teachers. That's what you are doing. You are destroying lives. My school is a great school, and I've had great teachers from kindergarten to 5th grade. You should be giving all teachers enough money to support their families and themselves. But instead, you're doing the exact opposite. You are making teachers stressed, and by doing that, you are making school less fun because you are not giving teachers enough money to do all the fun stuff like Stone Soup, Leprechaun Day, and Science Experiments, which we all know teachers are spending their own money to do. If it was up to me, you should be giving more money to do all those things. And I bet kids would be better behaved if the teachers were not so stressed and they were having more fun in school. You should not be blaming the teachers because of the kids' behavior. Because I know by experience that kids can do what they're supposed to do. Teachers work hard and should be paid enough money and shouldn't be punished for kids misbehaving at school. Teachers need your support, not your criticism.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Reagan. I teach at Gainesville High School. I also want to say that that was a great speech that came before me. So I'm tired and I'm frustrated. There's been a significant lack of communication since the memo regarding law enforcement interactions came out. Teachers have not been given training or directives other than to just broadly comply. We need information to pass on to our students. We need to be able to explicitly tell them what their rights are and how to protect themselves and their families. Palm Beach, Hillsborough, and other districts have had policies for years that comply with the law and still have more checks in place for law enforcement, like requiring judicial warrants. I put in a lot of time personally to try to understand what's going on by watching the meetings, including the 4-hour workshop, sharing with my colleagues what was discussed, trying to find resources for students who may be worried about ICE, reaching out to people in the community, driving across town to buy snacks for my students, preparing and purchasing materials in order to create engaging lessons, etc. And I do all of this on my own time, unpaid. And this is the expectations for teachers. And I don't think it's right, the contrast between the expected teacher effort and compensation and respect. And maybe I'm doing too much. And it sure feels like my efforts are not being appreciated or acknowledged, basically by anyone. Sometimes by my students or their parents or my colleagues, but not from anyone writing my paycheck. Teachers are expected to go above and beyond time and time again, and I don't know how much longer I can do this. I want to be able to provide snacks and prizes for my students and create engaging lessons that will engage students at all levels. But that takes time and energy and patience and money, and I'm running out. If teachers are made to come in and do training on a new data analytics software on our teacher workdays, as was mentioned in the school board workshop, that will just be the cherry on top. I think that I'm a good teacher, and I would hope that there are many kids in this district that agree, but I don't know how much more I can take. If you are unable or unwilling to provide us with fair compensation, at the very least, it's insulting and patronizing to continuously be micromanaged and blamed. I also know that we're concerned with students going to private schools. I'm one of the co-sponsors of the Mu Alpha Theta team at GHS, and I know a lot of kids from Buchholz, but also some from GHS in the middle schools are going to the Fraser School. They have great teachers, we have great teachers, but the climate in this district is making it difficult to say. Lastly, regarding AI, AI is not very good for the environment, and not to be that person who's like too woke or whatever, but it requires a lot of water and power to make it happen, and a lot of my students, you know, they're not even great at like file management or email skills, so I would really love if we could kind of walk before we run. Thank you.
Madam Chair, our next speakers for citizen input are Oliver Flanagan and Jade McKillop.
Hey, my name is Oliver Flanagan. I'm a student at Santa Fe High School, and I'm currently 17 years old. Now, I've been here the past couple months trying to speak about these different teacher raises, and the last narrative, the narrative that was presented to us is that the 1.6% raise was the most that the district could offer. That was all the money they had, that was all they can do, and that was y'all trying your hardest. But then we pushed it down to 1%. So my question is, where did the money go? Because what we talk about this entire argument is that it's allocated specifically, so we can't take money from other places, we can't push it towards teacher salaries. That's definitely true. But if we had money allocated to teacher salaries, then where did that 0.6% go? You have teachers who have been fighting for months to get a raise that they deserve, to have enough to support themselves and their families, and to not have to work multiple jobs on top of that. And you all knew that, and the bargaining team knew that, and still, you looked your staff in the eye, and you told them that you were gonna lower it and drop it down. And when they've been fighting this desperate fight for months, it's ridiculous. It is the most embarrassing thing for this district. We like to talk a lot big game about being so successful, about being one of the most progressive districts and more liberal districts in the state, and yet we have the lowest teacher salary increase in the entire state of Florida, and maybe the entire country, because right now Florida's the lowest. It's ridiculous. You all should be embarrassed. We had the conversation, we talked here about how the district failed and made poor financial decisions, and y'all agreed. Y'all failed. But then when we sit here and we have these decisions being made, no one wants to take actual accountability for it. The money, your staff deserve more. Every single day they deserve more. And every single time this bargaining team is coming forward from y'all's side and trying to intimidate your staff into doing a worse offer. But you've seen the courage that these teachers have had and the strength and resilience that they have had to keep coming up here and speaking and fighting again and not backing down and accepting a bad deal. Not once have your staff voted to accept this. Because you know they're not going to accept it, and they're certainly not going to accept 1%. That 3.5% is deserved. But if it is the truth, and 1.6% is all you can do, then put it back up to that and stop trying to make your teachers back down and accept the worst deal. Stand as a district that can actually hold their head up high and show that they do pay their teachers well, that they are a good place to work, that they have excellent schooling, because the more that these teacher salaries drop and the less raises you give each year as inflation outpaces us, teachers are going to leave. Or they just can't afford to work the job and they're having to quit and find somewhere else because they just can't sustain themselves. And again, I'm a student. I'm not seeing increases. I'm not seeing improvements. I'm not seeing anything like on my side of it that's happened at the expense of my teachers. Because they are what keeps education moving. They're the whole reason that I'm able to be here. They're the whole reason I'm able to speak here today. And they're the reason that I'm as successful as I am and that I'm able to succeed academically. But they're not getting paid enough. So that's going to continue to decline. And your students' success is going to continue to decline each and every day that you refuse to give them a better offer. None of these new testing equipment or AI policies, which AI in the first place, if we don't even have good finance classes, as you said, what is AI use going to do for our success in the workplace? Pay your teachers well.
Hello, my name is Jade McKillop, and I'm a junior from Santa Fe High School. I believe that teachers deserve a livable wage because they work so hard and are doing a very demanding job. They're educating your future teachers, doctors, law enforcement, and citizens. A pay raise would ensure that educated teachers are drawn into the field of teaching, which enables students to have quality teachers that are willing to teach them with a passion. Trust me, students can tell the difference between a quality teacher and someone who's just there to earn some extra money. I've personally had experiences with not so good teachers as well as amazing teachers. For example, my agriculture teachers are very passionate about their jobs, and it shows. They've taught me a lot and impacted my life in many ways. If a teacher doesn't have a passion for the subject they're teaching, they won't be able to inspire their students to pursue a career in that field. Teachers are really important in students' lives, which is why it's so important that we have good teachers. The only way to get good teachers is to pay them a livable wage. If we want quality education and to continue and our community to thrive, we need to raise teacher wages. Thank you.
Thank you, citizens. Now on to the
Well, before
sorry,
you go,
Ms. Surden.
thank you. You know, I didn't say this after Dr. Tessman and Ms. Ward spoke, but I want to bring something back to the attention. The board has invested money in the salary schedule since I've been on, but in this year, what's not acknowledged by some, but it is an expense to the board, is on July 1, Alachua County is one of the few districts that automatically progresses the pay. So there's a step increase that happens each July 1. Right, that's not free. That's $1.2 million. Okay, I keep hearing that we're the least amount in the state. So if you combine whatever comes out at the table now with that particular step, that does not put us at the bottom of the rung. But we've heard a couple times of what's different. Well, Cap 3 came out. And we saw that we lost a lot more students, and we saw that there was additional clawback of funds due to the increase in voucher use, if I'm not mistaken. Now that's on top of, as you said, Oliver, all the poor decisions that were made. Those poor decisions were made in the spring last year when a budget came to us where we were spending more money than we were estimated, the revenue we were estimated to come in. But we're mid-year now, right? So if we were to go and to start doing a reduction in force to teachers now, we'd have our Education Association coming at all of our heads if we did that now to free up money. So what's changed is additional information came forward. And the teacher salary increase, teacher salary allocation increase, the district gets to keep is $1.8 million. And that's what the board is. We have to stay in that. As I have said to my colleagues, I've said to staff, I've said to the public, is if our financial condition ratio, which are our reserves that we have on hand, the state requires you to have 3%. Our board policy is 5%. 3% is not even, 5% is not even 2 payrolls, right? So my commitment is to ensure that the four of us that are up here that are elected, that we keep control of the district. Because I'm going to say again, if we award raises that are a recurring cost, meaning we have to pay them today and in the future, our financial condition ratio could dip below 3%. And if that happens, the Department of Education will come in and they'll have control of the district. And every single expenditure will be approved by them. So if folks think that you're calling us stingy and we're not doing what folks think they should get, that'll be even less. But I really take offense because last school year, when for months we negotiated and it was a small amount, and the then superintendent, in order to get his contract over the line, came back and asked the board to approve a 3.5% raise. That was on top of the step that they had already gotten. And that was approved. $5 million out of fund balance. $5 million last year and that $5 million this year. So yeah, there are a lot of bad decisions that were made and they're costly, and it's gonna take time to right the ship. And we don't control the purse string. I've went through that before the break of our required local effort and our mill that's voted. That money is set, but the budget that we're operating in now, it started out that it was unbalanced and that the expenditures or appropriations that were put forth were $14.5 million more than estimated revenue. That was back in the summer and in September. And that's why I voted against it. I voted against it. I didn't create, people didn't like that, but I knew it was gonna put us here. So I appreciate you and your schoolmate, your classmate coming. I appreciate the staff coming. But we rule by majority, as you said. My colleagues may do whatever they want, but when I have repeatedly been saying year in and year out that we can add things, but what are we gonna cut? Because I knew ESSER was gonna end. I told them back then, I said, we're adding a school site. We're opening up a building for students that aren't paid in the FEFP. What we gonna cut? Because that costs money. I was a dissenting vote on that. I was a dissenting vote on that large pay increase. It's not that I don't think the teachers deserve it, but when you don't have it, and it's a reoccurring expense, it puts a strain on the budget, and now you're upset now. So I really hate that we're here, and I appreciate all of you all coming, but this board member isn't dealing in some kind of way that is dishonest with you all. I'm looking at the numbers and understand how they come in, and I understand that there were a lot of decisions that were made when we had ESSER, the pandemic funding. That was 3 years, but it ended September 30th, and we did not make decisions to position ourselves in a manner that now that ESSER has ended, we're able to function where it doesn't cause pain or cause dissent to us. So I just couldn't sit here and let that just kind of all this stuff being said, because we have media in here and we have employees in here, and folks are thinking that we're not wanting to do right by employees, but we do have parameters. I actually went back and wrote down the amount of the TSIA, because we were in, and that is what our goal is we have that. The state did allocate money for raises, and we're trying to operate out of that particular categorical. Okay, so thank you again for coming. Don't dismiss anything that you all said, but there are some constraints, and we are losing students. There are some things that need to be done, but we had a change mid-year, right? The guy took his money and he left. He took his bag and he left. And so now we got somebody here that's trying to, she didn't create the issue, but she got to fix the issue. And that's where we are now. And we're trying we're all putting our heads together and trying to come up with some solutions so we can move forward and hopefully stop the bleed of students, correct some things, support our teachers, support our staff, so that we can right the ship and we can go forward. But we won't get better if we keep spending money by the cupfuls when it's only coming in by the tablespoonfuls. You can't, that's an imbalance. You can't do that. So, I mean, I hate it, and I know it's very frustrating to our staff and to the young lady Summer. I applaud you for having the courage to come and speak here to us, and for your parents having to work extra job. Ms. Rivera, hats off to you. You know, she said what she does. I know I've been in her classroom. I know she works with kids. I went over to a math club a couple days a week for kids, and I went over the day I went, they were reviewing standards from August up until now. So I said to myself, oh, that's why those kids are doing so well on the test. Thank you for that. I don't discount it. But I promise you, Gina, if the funds were available to do something other than what we brought to the table, what the district team has brought to the table, you would have my vote to do that. I hope you know me, that I've always been honest with you. But it is what we're not in a good place right now. We're not financially, we're not in a good place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Surden. I also want to add a little bit, because Oliver asked a very specific question about where did the money go.
Yeah.
And so Ms. Surden and I had pointed out when the budget came to us that we were expensing more out of general fund than we were allocated in the general fund, which is what salaries come out of. And yes, the budget was technically balanced because of dipping into the fund balance and capital fund transfer, but we were still overspending the general fund allocation. We knew that. The first budget that came, it was $11 million. The second one that came, it was $14 million. And while I voted for those budgets because legally we're required to pass a budget, I said we need to have a plan to fix this. No plan came to us. I begged and pleaded for the plan, and instead our superintendent left. That budget was also built on an enrollment estimate from the state that we knew was too high. And our initial offer of 1.6% was based on what we knew we would lose based on that too high enrollment estimate. We knew that we would lose $4 million from what the state had allocated. We knew that. That was what we expected to lose, and that's what we based that 1.6 offer on. Instead, we lost $6.5 million. And that is because of the vouchers. When a student gets one of those FES scholarships, they get a guaranteed dollar amount. But just like the district has our dollar amount that we can't grow, the state has a dollar amount for education funding that they can't grow. It's passed in the state budget. So when they had more of those scholarships than they budgeted for, those scholarships are guaranteed amounts. They don't say to a parent who brought that money to Fraser School, oh, you're getting $500 less. No, they pass that budget loss onto the district. So that extra $2.5 million that we lost was because of the state not budgeting enough for those vouchers. So that's where that 0.6% went. It went to what we call prorating of our base student allocation because of them overspending on the vouchers, which, you know, when I try to explain to people, I said, imagine you have $100 for education because you assume you're gonna have 10 students. So you have 10 students, $10 each. They're all public school students. If you had 15 public school students, you underestimated, you say, oops, you still have $7.50 each, it's not that bad. But in this situation, if those 5 students are FES scholarships that they weren't expecting, those 5 students still get their $10 each, leaving only 50 behind for the 10 public school students and dropping their funding, so to $5 each. And I know, you know, those are very small numbers, but that's a way to kind of understand how this prorating works when I'm trying to explain it to people. And yes, there were very bad financial decisions made. When the decision was made to open another school site, Ms. Surden and I both voted against it. Another very harmful decision was ending the Williams Magnet program. We lost most of those students to Fraser School. That was not even brought to the board for a vote. So, and those are just the 2 biggest bad decisions off the top of my head. And we are working to improve them. Those decisions, I know we have, you know, as things come for next school year, we'll be having the staffing manual, our staffing allocations manual will be coming. Dr. Patton, is that the first May meeting?
Yes. And just wanted to add in one extra thought, too. So the family empowerment scholarships that she's referring to is exactly correct. So the last 5 years, we always got that calculation in January. The previous 15 years, we got it in December. So this is highly unusual that it took the state that long, till March 3rd. And just share one step further, the state, because that was so messed up with the family empowerment scholarships, districts that were impacted the most then were actually given, so we sit at a $6.5 million deficit. They gave us 1.8. We wouldn't be sitting at 6.5, we would be sitting at $7.3 million deficit, but they saw, and not every district got that, it depended, but that shows you, like, we would have been even worse if the state didn't give
It was
that extra.
8.3, wasn't it, before they?
Sorry?
8.3, not 7.3, before they gave us that money.
6 to 5, I think it was 1.8,
Right.
and then 1.8, oh, gosh, yes, hello. Fuzzy math there, 8.3 million. So it was basically almost $2 million more. It would have been 6.5, right, to 8.3. So we'd be in a worse shape. So to Oliver's point, no way would we know what those numbers were until the state gave it to us. So Oliver, and thank you again for being very articulate. We're glad that you have those great teachers that have helped, and I also want to tell your parents, I'm sure they've helped raise you to also be part of that. So hopefully that'll help you a little bit to know what happened. But thank you for asking.
And I'll have more to say on this. I just want to say that, like, I think I feel similar to Dr. Patton. And if you're on a Reddit, we're just both bag holders. It's okay. We're going to deal with it.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Dr. Patton.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends that the school board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, we do have a speaker for this one.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Surden. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Vu. And is there public comment?
Yes, Speaker Taylor Gilfillan.
Good evening, Taylor Gilfillan, current co-chair of the DAC and a former district employee. I think I'm just gonna ask some questions because I'm trying to educate myself, and we're hot off this conversation about where the money is. Don't quote me on this. I just scanned through the purchased services and things we have on our consent agenda, and there's almost $300,000. I know we're talking about a fund balance recovery plan, and I don't know if that's something that we're waiting on board approval for, but I'm just thinking we're getting ready to pass go on $300,000. Just where's our increased due diligence around how we're being really thoughtful and targeted with how we're spending our money and what we're saying yes and no to. There's everything on there from a field trip for $13,000 to something called VMware vSphere renewal for almost $50,000 with no explanation or detail of what it is. So just my ask, as we're thinking about and going through and talking about budget, just where are we seeing that lived in our processes for how we're saying yes and no to the things that are coming to the board between now and the end of the school year? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilfillan. Are there any board member questions or comments? Mr. Vu.
Yeah, this might be a best question for Chief Eunice. I'm specifically turning to consent agenda item number 7, just on the budget amendment for capital. Nothing specific here, just in general. I see that we do get revenues a year of about $68 million. I know about 30 of it comes from the half-cent sales tax. One of my biggest things is, and I've asked about, I know we're still in the process of it, but just a question on what does it truly cost us in a year to maintain our facilities and to make sure we're keeping our facilities modern, up to date, updating, repairing HVAC and things like that, and just making sure that I, from a board member's perspective, who has to make sure that these funds are spent wisely and spent well, that's just kind of a lens I need to truly understand.
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I can get it back to you. I can respond back to you.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Ms. Surden.
Thank you. And I didn't pull the budget amendments, but I'll be voting on the consent agenda just because I didn't pull them. I didn't want to delay the meeting. Okay.
I believe we have another public speaker, public comment.
Madam Chair, Armando Grundy Gomez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Armando Grundy Gomez. The one thing I wanted to talk about when you all were bringing forward about the Budget Amendment 13, item number 6, item number 7, and item number 8. So I believe that's Amendment 13, 14. So specifically, I want to come in when we had the last discussion at your last meeting when it came to respect to capital projects. If it's my understanding, I do believe you're going to have a cut in your operating or general fund of almost $20 million. What I was concerned about, and I don't know what this budget amendment is going to do, but a discussion I'll probably save if need be, Madam Chair, if appropriate, to talk about the capital projects and how we're spending our dollars and what those dollars and funds are going to be accounted for into, because that is, when we have dwindling enrollment, it is going to be extremely important for us to make sure we're accounting for every dollar. I believe the capital fund, Madam Chair, is $150 million, but I want to make sure I'm talking to these reports. So specifically, I know they're not pulled, and y'all are going on consent, and I can't see this, and I have not looked. Can somebody please share with the public, for the record, what 13, 14, and 15 are, number one, and what capital projects with that amendment would be? That's important, because I think what is sacrosanct is what we are going to spend every dollar on. I think whether it's going to be spent for, not if capital funds can't be spent for teacher pay or employee pay, but what it does do is making sure the quality of life of our teachers and our students, whether they're in mold infested, that toxic air, you have vermin within the ceiling tiles, there is schools, and that's where capital comes in. So anytime there's going to be accounting or spending of 20% of your capital expenditures for stuff outside of the role of what you do, which is the education of children, that is primary the goal. Sports is always secondary. If we're not even, we have black children that are literate at the rate of 19% in this county. That's atrocious. And so when we have a community and schools that have mold in them, and then some facilities come back and say, no problem here, folks, I don't want to see cognitive dissonance and say, we're going to take 20% of our budget and spend $30 million on an asset that's outside of the scope of what we do. Recreation is important, but we want to have a conversation, and I'm going to save that for later. But I want to know what 13, 14, and 15 are, Madam Chair, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Grundy Gomez. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with Ms. Surden in dissent, 3-1. Moving on to action items. The extended school year packet, Ms. McClooney.
Madam Chair, I'll present the item. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Roll.
Yes.
Sorry, my agenda had Ms. McClooney.
Yes, ma'am, it does. Good evening, Madam Chair, Superintendent Patton, board members. On behalf of Superintendent Patton, I am pleased to present the 2025 Extended School Year Summer Packet for approval. These summer programs reflect the superintendent's commitment to providing meaningful educational opportunities through targeted instructional support and enrichment for students across our district. Here is a highlight of a few of the programs for approval tonight. Summer VPK Bridge program. These programs will have a strong focus on emergent literacy skills grounded in the science of reading. The Summer Bridge program is a state-required program and will be offered to VPK completers from the district and private providers scoring below the 10th percentile on the PM3 FAST. Our third grade reading camp. This state-required program will provide targeted reading instruction and interventions for students who have not yet met third grade promotion criteria. Title I Elementary Extended School Year for grades 1 and 2. This program is designed to support our current first and second grade students that will benefit from intensive instruction, and additional support meeting grade level expectations. U-Fly Foundations will be used to provide support with building foundational skills. We have our kindergarten extended school year program. This program provides current kindergarten students with additional academic support to meet grade level expectations. U-Fly Foundations will also be used to strengthen literacy and foundational school skills. We have our summer learning program for grades 1 and 2. This program will be offered at select schools, providing a STEAM focus while also providing intensive academic support through the integration of science, technology, engineering, art, and math activities. And we also have our CROP, credit recovery for middle and high school students. To help our students stay on track for graduation and academic success, the summer CROP program will be provided for students needing to recover a failing grade in a required course. The final program I will highlight tonight is our summer program for our students with disabilities. This program is tailored to meet the individual needs of our students with disabilities in grades K through 12 and will be driven by their IEP goals. The curriculum will focus on academic, communication, social, and independent functioning skills to ensure continued progress and success. We are excited about the potential impact these programs will have in supporting the academic success of our students. Madam Chair, the superintendent recommends the board approve the 2025 Extended School Year Program packet as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Roll. I believe we have public comment on this item.
Yes, Madam Chair, Taylor Gilfillan.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name's Taylor Gilfillan. Had some noticings and I have some questions, I think, about this document, particularly in regards to the program evaluation and the implementation. I think just overall, after reading through this, there's just a concerning lack of specificity in the program evaluation to know whether or not these programs will be successful. On page 3, under expected outcomes, it reads, students who participate in extended school year will be better prepared for the upcoming school year. I don't think that's sufficient. There are 5 programs that state goals with the phrase 75% of students will show gains in X, ISIP, SAT 10, third grade's a little different with this particular test they use, but what does this mean? What is a gain? How are we measuring that? Does that mean a 1-point scale score is gain and we check the box for that student grew? I guess I'm also wondering about the goal of 75% in general. If this is targeted enrichment and support, why are we not setting a higher bar for the students we invite to this program? And if we can't reach a higher bar, should we lower the numbers of students to make it more targeted and ensure they're getting the supports they need? I think just a couple of questions I have. Is there a deadline for parents to get notification about whether or not their child will be eligible for these programs? I'm thinking particularly for the schools that are waiting on PM3 data from FAST. Last day schools, May 31st. These schools or these camps start on June 9th. How are we making sure that we're not waiting until the very last minute to even proactively communicate with parents, right? We're getting those PM3 scores daily or right like the day after. So just what's in place to make sure we're just really ahead of time working with families to make sure we're getting folks on board and ready to participate. I think along with that too, just do we have target or max enrollments for these programs, right? What's the right number of kids that we can really ensure they're gonna have a quality experience for the summer? Also I saw on there was Camp Crystal. I know this has been a topic of discussion in the past with just myself, I guess, not being really left clear with what the board policy is or whether or not we're going to be ensuring that people are, that we, I guess, are following board policy when it comes to who gets the scholarships, if we're still offering scholarships, and making sure that everyone has a chance to have a great experience at Camp Crystal. So those are just my few of my thoughts. I welcome just, I guess, to be educated and learn more about this, but just overall, I'm really concerned about the lack of specificity, and I think we can set a higher bar for students and teachers for what we want to have happen as a result of these programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilfillan. And I did just want to mention that the Camp Crystal policy was revised with much greater specificity, and a new manual, a new procedural manual was developed. So I know there were some major issues in the past, but that has been completely revamped. All right, on to board member discussion. Mr. Vu.
Following up a lot of what Citizen Gilfillan said, especially when it comes to the KPIs that are mentioned, it seems like 75 was used throughout the document. My question is, what informed the 75%, and how did that become our goal? I know some of these programs are discontinuations programs last year, so what was that figure last year? And the same thing, when it comes to a gain, I know that when we're talking about FAST or state testing, we know what a gain is. The state pretty much defines it for us, but for our own benefits, when we say a gain, what does that mean? And so I'd love information on that too. And then how we're gonna establish a baseline from which we even judge these KPIs. That's really unclear here, especially since they're really different all the way through. And so we're trying to see where they are when they start the program. We're trying to see where students are when they ended PM3, et cetera. And essentially, those are it. I see again here, I'm glad I see program evaluation, but what does that really look like? And again, this does seem really vague.
Ms. Surden.
So, not to beat the 75% dead horse, but I actually did have that as well. And what really made me want to ask that question is I was in a breakout session at COSBA. So how are we going to identify the 25% that we say we don't expect them to make proficiency? Like, are we going to tell the families that you can come, but we're not expecting everybody? That was one of the presenters said that, like, we got to expect that everybody will do well. So, and of course, I've shared with Dr. Patton my concerns about the cost, and she told me the title grants, it was in that budget, but the general fund. So I'm concerned about our impact on the general fund, and it's in there now, I'm told, but I am still a big concern. And the KPI one and the program evaluation is what brings me concern, as well as we say we're going to use the youth flyer. We really like selecting staff people to work in the extended school year who have shown through their data during the school year that they are using UFly with fidelity, properly, and that's it. We need our kids to come up. We need student outcomes to change. So for us as a board and as the adults that's dealing with this, we've got to start looking and doing things a little bit different. So those are the concerns that I have with moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Surden. I just wanted to clarify, the vast majority of these programs are required by either the state or federal government. Is that correct, Ms. Roll?
A summer bridge is required, as well as third grade summer reading camp.
And ESE and ESOL and Title I, because that was in our grant.
The ESOL is written into our ESOL plan. Yeah.
And the Title I is written into our Title I plan.
The Title I, we are using our Title I funds, rollover funds, to provide those opportunities for our students.
Right. So other than the Title I, that, the vast majority of the students who qualify are determined by the regulations that require the program. So we will not necessarily know what our target enrollment number is until PM3 scores come out, correct?
PM3 scores will drive a lot of the students that will be selected for the program. So we will find out for a third grade summer reading camp after PM3. Parents have already been notified, though. Those students that are scoring below grade level for PM2, letters have been sent out to those parents. We will also send additional letters out. I think we're sending those letters out in April. Yes. Yes.
All right, and then, so my other question is, the vast majority of these are either required or they were written into grant programs. This STEAM exploration program, I have concerns about it because we'll be using general fund dollars to pay for a program that is not required. And the explanation I was given for why it's happening is that there's only a very small handful of elementary schools that won't have the Title I program, and we wanted to give them something. But my concern with this, just give them something that costs money, is we used ESSER funds for several summers to give every elementary school what was supposed to be an academic excellence changing, like a really pivotal kind of intensive trajectory changing experience for students. And the board still has not received outcome data for that. And if we look at the testing data from our schools, I do not see that kind of transformative trajectory changing long-term outcome from that. And so I personally am very uncomfortable allocating very, very, very limited general fund dollars to a program that is similar to what we've paid for in the past and not seen any outcomes from. So I will be voting against this based on that program. Dr. Patton. Oh, Dr. McNeely. Do you have your?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I was talking with the superintendent. Many of the questions that have been raised this evening, I spoke with staff earlier today, and so I have my answers. They were comparable and right on target with what we should be doing in our summer programs. We looked at our Title I, we looked at the STEAM with several schools, Talbot, Hidden Oak, Meadowbrook. Those were explained why those schools were being situated like they were, because they are not Title I schools. But I was very concerned with the programming for the eastern quadrant of Alachua County Public Schools. And all of my questions that I had between 1 o'clock and 2:30 were answered. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. McNeely. Mr. Vu, did you have something else?
Yes. I guess the question is, Dr. Rockwell brings up a good point here in terms of like what's required and what's not. The STEAM summer school programs are not required, by law. Which are the other ones that are not required?
We have our Camp Crystal, we have our extended day. We are providing CROP for our students to have the opportunity to recover course failure. Not necessarily required, but this is what we would like to provide for our students to have the opportunity to remain on track for graduation. We have VPK, which we are offering for our VPK students. We are having 2 classes of that for the summer. It's not necessarily required, but these are for our students that have not had the opportunity to attend VPK during the regular school year. They have the opportunity to use their vouchers during the summer. Okay, required. Okay, thank you. Summer Bridge, yes, Summer Bridge is required. Yes, Summer Bridge is required.
But the regular VPK is not, but it is a money-making enterprise over the summer. I want to clarify, because the voucher pays for all of the hours, unlike during the school year when it pays for half of them. I want the public to hear that. And Camp Crystal is a money-making venture over the summer. And extended year enrichment, the EDEP summer program is
Extended
also.
day, EDEP, yes.
The EDEP summer program is also financially self-sustaining, correct?
That is. And then Ms. Rodriguez is going to talk a little bit more about VPK.
So there's 2 VPK programs for the summer. The one that we've always done is 300-hour. That's actually required of all school districts, even though it is a money-making opportunity, because we do get funded at a much higher rate than during the school year. It actually is written into legislation that as a public school district, we must do it. And then this year they came out with a new one through Just Read Florida that is also required. It's a 100-hour program. So that is a completely different funding source, actually, but they're both required.
Thank you so much.
And that new one is interesting because it's actually for all VPK in Alachua, so that means our, not partners, the folks that are not taking VPK, providers, thank you, that's the word, the state providers of VPK. So if they're in 10 different sites and their kids score in the bottom 10%, they have to come to our schools this summer. So it'll be a little different, making sure that we stay lockstep with them. We've met with them, they know the expectations, so it'll be just interesting to watch, because usually our kids are our kids, so it'll be a little different.
And then how timely is it that it passes tonight? Is this something that has to happen tonight due to certain legislation? Are we locked into it, or?
The summer school?
For some of these summer programs, correct?
No, if you have some couple, we could bifurcate it. The ones that we want to pass through, the ones that you want to hear more something about.
It sounds like the only one we really are questioning right now is STEAM, because it sounds like that's the only one that's solely paid for the district, and in a year where we're saying we're making hard decisions, nominally this is something we'd be totally for, but at the same time, I think we need to look at all the costs, not a no, but I think we should vote on this separately and maybe table the STEAM for the discussion. So,
and again, remember too, the idea of the STEAM is because of the fact there are 4 schools that still have Title I, that have level 1 and level 2 kids. So more for that equity for all of our lowest kids is what the thought was. But again, your call, you know what it's for. Let me just comment on 2 other things. One, you're correct, Mrs. Certain, it was not in the budget at all. I don't know how you missed summer school, and I don't usually make comments about the past, but that is a little unusual, but it is already in that budget. So when we have that 4.4, those funds are accounted, so you're actually right about that. And I don't know why you didn't get the assessment data in the past, but I can absolutely assure you, and I think anything that I've told you, I assure you, you will get it this year, because we want to see that, right? It's not really that we're doing it to give it to the board members. We want to see where was that difference made or not. So absolutely, you'll get that.
And I would just want to know what we did last year, because when we were saying 75% of students enrolled show gains, I'm like, well, if we were already at a 75%, we're not really aiming higher. I'd like to see us always aiming higher, for example, and none of that's indicated. So I'm going to move we split the question. I would like to split it into 2 separate items here: the entire packet minus the STEAM exploration extended year. And yeah, that's my motion.
And again, Mr. Wu, before you go on to that, if you think, because I'm not sure what's going to be different when you come back. So if you see what I'm saying? So what do you want us to bring back about that?
I split the question, and let's just discuss it now. I think we can vote the rest of the packet. It seems like there is a support for the rest of the packet, for the rest of the programs.
Mr. Delaney?
Actually, I did make a motion, and that's how we started discussing it.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
We had it, that's how it was, huh?
I didn't hear it either. I didn't hear a motion either.
Oh, I thought I made a motion, and we did, but it's okay, well.
My notes reflect that we don't have a motion yet on the floor prior to Mr. Vu's. So.
Okay. That would be my mistake then, that I didn't get a motion before going to citizen input.
So I think now we've got a motion on the floor from Mr. Vu, and we need to know if there's a second for that.
So do you mind repeating what you just said? I heard you say to take out summer STEAM.
Yeah, I moved to split the question, so basically vote on it separately. So to take the packet as is minus the STEAM, and then we'll have that as the separate item right after this one, we vote on this, and then we can decide whether or not we want to keep this as a group or table it and come back after more information. Or.
So Mr. Vu's making a motion to vote on the packet minus page 10, the STEAM exploration extended school year. So is your motion to approve the packet minus that?
Yes.
Okay.
Split the question, but yeah, essentially, yes.
Madam Chair, I have a question to my colleague. Mr. Vu, would you explain, I must have missed that, you're wanting us to vote on the packet but pull the STEAM piece out? Is that your request?
Yes, and it was more just when Dr. Rockwell indicated she wasn't supporting the packet as a whole. As a whole, I was in the same place, but I still wanted to get most of this moving to a yes, and then just discuss with us as a group the one thing that seems to be kind of a roadblock, just so we can get more to yes on the things we all agree on.
The packet will have 2 votes. The whole packet and then the STEAM piece.
Thank you so much.
Okay, is there a second for Mr. Vu's motion? All right, if there's no second, the motion dies, and this item will have
So
to,
no, I'm going to make another motion.
okay.
I'm going to move that and the reason why I didn't second that is we have level 1 and level 2 students, and that's $46,000 that are at schools that are non-Title I, based on what they've told us in here, right? And we know if those kids are not targeted with some remediation early on, it's going to cost us more money later on.
I'm just wanting more.
So, yeah, so for me, I'm okay with us moving this along, but us coming back, asking Dr. Patton to really come back to us with something better. Or we could, I hate to say no on that, because level 1 and level 2 students are what made, disaggregating that data by school is what made me run.
So, wanted to table it so we could just get more information. As a group, more information, but the vote is the vote.
What I don't want to happen is us to bring this out and the superintendent and our staff think that we don't want to move forward with that in the name of money, because like there's some NJROTC and stuff in here that I got a problem with that over level 1, level 2 students.
I'm just trying not to have the whole packet die. That's all.
But if we're gonna bifurcate it, I think we need to take out then what's really not required. So
I think that's valid too.
No, I mean, I'm just saying that I can't, for me, it's hard to support, and you saying we're going to take out just for those students that are at the non-Title I
It
schools.
seemed like there wasn't a consensus on fully, and to get us to one. That's all.
No, that wasn't the only one I had an issue with. I had an issue with some of the others if we're gonna split it down here is about that. But maybe we will just, we table this and we bring it back in 2 weeks, and we can all have some input with Dr. Patton. So I move that we table this until the April 15th meeting. Does that give you and staff enough time to continue to move forward, Dr. Patton?
Yeah, because ultimately, we're not notifying the parents yes or no right now in the next 2 weeks.
No,
Right.
I heard
Is that what you mean?
Ms. Rose say something about parents would be notified in April. So do you all have a date?
Just a second letter of notification to those
Right.
parents that have already been notified.
Okay.
They first, in January, we send a second as an extra, and then we remind them in the beginning of May that you may, depending on the scores. So are you going to just individually tell me where the concerns are, or did you want to go through? Okay.
Do that. So I move
Okay.
we table this until the April, when's our next meeting, 15th?
Yeah, 15th.
15th meeting.
Yep, thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of tabling this to the next meeting? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. On to action item 2, the fund balance recovery plan. Dr. Patton.
Thank you. So with that loss of revenue that we've already mentioned a couple times tonight, the third calculation on March 3rd, the reason we're bringing this tonight is because of the board policy that does state that if it's under 5%, that it requires a general fund balance restoration plan. So that is why you have this before you tonight. So noticing that in there it mentions that currently it's at a 4.41 under. You sure? Okay, so under that 5% of 4.41, and just to point out to you and the public again, that's before whatever increases do occur. So in other words, that number will be lower than 4.41 unless there's 0 raises given. And then, but it does include already the 1% that was given in July, though. So as you had read, what did we do? The immediate corrective plan. So we had frozen hiring now. We've also have staffing reductions, so any unfilled positions, we closed all of those unfilled positions. We also went through the department's budgets and reduced those budgets. We have frozen all overtime only for emergencies and urgencies, and those have to be approved. And then we're also already starting to consolidate positions. And then I'll keep each of you updated then monthly where we're at to see the difference that these different actions are taken. And then long-term, as we progress through the budgets for next year, we'll be looking at different things. You already mentioned the staffing allocations. We're having department staffing reviews done differently than what we've done in the past. Tomorrow starts the training. They'll bring back and they'll meet with myself on the 8th and the 9th of next week. So that's all brand new, different procedures than what we've done. Also that projected budgeting is what they'll be doing, with already starting at a 15% reduction from what we reduced, remember, back in February when we had already cut the budget, so it's 15% below where they were. Somebody did ask, is that from last year's budget? And everybody kind of giggled, said, no, from where we last made the cut. So it'll be 15 on top of that. And then also making sure that that conservative forecasting, so that was done. We had to turn it into March. That was our problem last year. We did not forecast it conservatively, and then we budgeted to that number that we got from the state. So this is us getting ahead of that to make sure that the state doesn't give us money that we know we're not going to generate and be in the same predicament next year. And then ultimately that idea is to get that goal to the fund balance to be above 5% and then continue to build that, because we don't want to sit at 5%. Things happen, so we want to be able to make sure that we move that beyond 5. So 5 is what's the board's requirement, but we need to be above that.
All right, having heard from the superintendent, I move that we receive the report that she's given on the fund balance recovery plan.
It's been moved by Ms. Surden, seconded by Mr. Vu. We have 3 speakers.
Good evening, everyone. Taylor Gilfillan again. A couple of thoughts I had going through this. I apologize, Dr. Patton, if I missed this and you just shared this. I was hoping we could answer the question for these immediate corrective actions, just if implemented, will that get us to the 1.75 million shortfall? Just kind of like, do we know how it all stacks up, or is this just kind of like a doing what we can to lower it? I think a couple other thoughts I had, and this is just, again, for me, educating myself and wanting to know and understand. When we say consolidating positions, is that the same thing as a reduction in staff? Or is that like more of like a looking forward, how can we combine roles and responsibilities in the future while keeping the same staff we have in place? I think something that I've noticed in conversations as we're talking about the budget, as we're talking about teacher salaries, as we're talking about how we spend money, is there just seems to be a disconnect. I think there is a wall of jargon, of the difference between capital outlay expenditures and what actually translates to what people get in their paychecks or how we pay for things. So just a thought that I would like for the board and staff to consider as we think about the fiscal 26 budget, even saying like fiscal year just sounds financially. Consider thinking about what a citizen oversight or advisory committee could look like for the budget development process. I think the goal of this advisory committee would not be to certainly not micromanage or criticize, but I think would be an opportunity to educate and inform people along the way as we think about and discuss what we can and cannot spend the money we have on what. I know that Palm Beach County already has a system like this in place. And in fact, if you go to their website on March 21st, they just had one of their meetings and are already looking at how their budget for next year aligns to their strategic priorities, which, speaking of which, that's a whole other conversation we should think about having as well as we go into next year. I know we have some oversight committees for things like the half cent and 1 mil. I think I get the gist of like what we say 1 mil, but like, I don't think I could explain it to somebody else, right? I just think there's just, as we're thinking about this disconnect, I think there's an opportunity for us to educate and engage folks around this in a really meaningful way. And just a couple of follow-up thoughts too on the previous action item. As I take my last 10 seconds, I think some things that need to happen are just to be really clear and define what we mean by gains. And also I noted that for the summer services for students with IEP, there actually isn't a goal, and to set one, please. Thank you.
Hello, again, Gina Rivera. I wanted to, I don't know if respond is the correct term, but first of all, I want to say thank you to the board members who have taken the time to talk to me personally. Ms. Certain, Mr. Vu, Dr. Rockwell have come personally to my classroom to speak on several things and answer questions that I have had. So when they address me directly after I have spoken, I think they're doing it because they have been there in person to person, face to face, to try to explain why the situation is the way that it is. That's why initially, and I wanted to explain what I had said earlier a little bit to more detail. As you can see, I wasn't trying to say, just pay me more. I asked for a plan. So I am a doer, just like Ms. Certain is. I am a numbers person. I teach math for a living. I like things to be clear and concise. So to Taylor's point, I'm sorry to call you by your first name. I just don't want to mispronounce your last name. I want to make sure that we understand. For example, Dr. Rockwell had mentioned a couple of months ago making a presentation that had visuals with clear numbers for people so they would understand this is what capital funds are, this is what we are allowed to use for teacher raises or something that we can move and allocate to something else, because right now we're working on rumors. I don't know exactly what all of those things mean because I don't have the knowledge that you guys have or the financial team has. So if you were to explain it to your staff kind of clear and concise, like I've asked before, this is what the numbers are. I'm not willing to move this number to this column to give it to you as a raise because this is what I have planned for those $20 million. This is where these $20 million are going to go. Then I am a logical person, like I've said before. I can understand that. Oh, you're doing it to repair this school's HVAC system because they're working with mold in their classrooms? Totally. A teacher shouldn't have to breathe toxic mold before I get my, 2%. I don't need my money before that teacher can teach in a safe place. I understand that. But what I want then is to be able to say, I know exactly where that money's going for or going to. I know what it's going to repair. I know how much is going to be left over. This is why we can only offer you 1% because we're prioritizing these things. Once I know that, I also will like to know I'm closing this site because it's not providing what we thought was going to provide, even if it was the previous administration that did it. This is no longer viable. We're done with this. So even if it doesn't fix our salary increase this year, I just want to see, okay, where do we fix it? I just want to make sure that people understand I'm not here to yell just because she's money hungry, she wants the money, where's my money? It's more like, okay, where is it? What is it being spent on? How come it cannot come this way? What is the justification for it to go somewhere else? I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, Armando Grundy Gomez. I think I'm going to pick up where Mr. Gilfillan left off. Is the first question that we should ask ourselves when it comes to dealing with multi-million-dollar budgets. I'm not going to put this all on the leader of Ms. Patton. She got here. But it's important to understand and ascertain, how do we get here? And how we got here was there was some things that we made decisions on. And there's always a consequence. And what you know is when you look at a budget, that's what you value. Your organization tells you what it values by what it's put in the budget. And sometimes people would want to spend things on getting a football stadium for Buholtz. There's a cost to that. That didn't happen, but There's expenditures that go along the way. And then I remember a school board member, and Madam Chair, I'm going to remain nameless, but this school board member is still here. And this school board member once said, if we spend it, you're going to buy it, and we're going to probably go below our threshold. But when we have our leader is Ms. Patton. We cannot put, I want to be crystal clear, it is not fair to put the auspice on her. But when you are the leader, you're in charge. But she's put in a tenuous position. Number one, you're dealing with having to make significant cuts. But also what's in those cuts is also important, and how we break them down and extrapolate them. And I've asked this question for 2.5 years, and I'm going to continue to ask it because I never get an answer from anyone on the board. And I think it's really disrespectful until it comes. But if you don't answer this question, I know somebody up in Tallahassee that's going to answer it for you. So I'm going to ask it again, and I'll just ask it. And that question is, why are we not reducing our footprint? We have all these buildings, and it's not just on one side of town, but we have these buildings we don't use, and you're talking about consolidating positions and putting people on the unemployment lines, but you're not changing your spending behaviors. You have more outgoing than what's coming in, and your enrollment, but you're still not changing your behaviors. And not one of you that's up there is asking that question. And some of you say, we want to close it on one side of town, but not the other, or don't close it on my side of town, but it's okay for the other side of town. We need to have a district-wide open process looking at every asset, not just Twilliger by the Oaks Mall, every asset in this. I deal with multi-million-dollar budgets all the time. It is imperative we stop spending. It's called a structural budget deficiency. If you have somewhat of an accounting 101, you know what that is. And some of you up there know what that is and still aren't saying, why are we not changing our behaviors? It starts there before you do people. Your people are your assets, not those buildings. Those are your people. And to consolidate that over inanimate objects is shameful. And so I want to encourage us to dig deeper and start asking tough questions and not just consolidating our people. Thank you.
Do we have caller? No. All right, board members. No one has a light on. So I have a comment. I think, you know, as board members, we meet with Dr. Patton every week. And so nothing that she said today from the dais was new information to me. I know what she's doing and I know why, but I think it would be helpful to have a document that is attached to this agenda or even a future agenda that shows, you know, okay, hiring freeze is saving this much money. Department budget cuts is saving this much money. Each of those overtime freeze, each of those things that you mentioned, and even if it's an approximate or projected budgetary savings, because I think one of the common threads that I hear from our commenters is a lack of transparency. And so as an example, Mr. Grundy Gomez just talked about facilities footprint and why is nobody asking the question. Dr. Patton can attest to the fact that I've asked that question at our one-on-ones every week for months. And I suspect that that's true of my colleagues up here as well. But if that isn't coming, and I know it's been complicated by the charter conversion situation in Newberry. I've also gotten questions about what happened to rezoning. I thought you were going to finish the rezoning this year. Well, you may not know this, but a charter school is a choice school. So when that school converts, every single child who currently lives in that school zone has to be assigned a new zone school from the district. So as you can imagine, that has put a little bit of a speed bump in a district-wide rezoning and in the potential to consolidate facilities on that side of town, because now that capacity will be needed for students who don't want to attend that charter school. So there are things that have complicated some of these processes, but I think whatever we can make transparent and open to the public, we should. I'm a big proponent of transparency. I know sometimes transparency can be concerning because I'll give an example. We knew that we were going to lose funding because of decreased enrollment, but if we had been really transparent about we're going to lose $4 million, and everybody heard 20 times, saw in the newspaper, saw on the TV, oh, the district's going to lose $4 million, when Calc 3 finally came in and it was actually $6.5 million, you all would have been like, I mean, the community would have been mad. Why can't your accounting team get it right? How was your estimate that off? Were you lying to us? You know, it would have created a lot of distrust and confusion, even though we could have never predicted that our BSA would be prorated because of the vouchers. That wasn't something our financial team could have predicted. But if we had jumped the gun on the state calculation and been transparent with our guesstimate, it would have created that distrust. But not being transparent also creates distrust. So it really puts us as a board and our district staff in a difficult position. But whenever we do have concrete information or a concrete plan in place, I think we do need to be transparent with that information. Thank you. Mr. Vu.
I came into the situation like Dr. Patton did, to where you're coming in and, you know, I had seen these things from afar, especially when you're seeing the general fund go down. My own experience in the district, knowing that all this money was going toward salaries, and so all these jobs were ESSER funded, and then when, of course, ESSER went away, we just folded them in the general fund. And when you look at what we're paying, like district administrators versus others, counties, it's a lot more. It's a lot more in the millions. It's a lot more in the numbers. It's double digits more. And we're seeing that right now. We're seeing all the costs for it. So I'm going to try not to be here, but I tell my friends, I tell folks that I get so angry. I get really angry. I get angry as a taxpayer. I get angry as a teacher. I get angry that we had leadership here who was intentionally or not sinking the ship, especially financially, especially knowing the repercussions of what happens when your general fund balance goes below 3%. And there were even recent, like literally, like 2 years before, examples of where this almost happened if they weren't bailed out by the federal government and ESSER money. So, you know, I look at all these things that Dr. Patton is putting together, her, and then Ms. Drumchuk, again, I just thank her so much too for just how stark and honest she is about, you know, our financial condition, because that's something I want to hear, even if it's bad news. So when I look at all these things, these corrective actions, I'm going to say I agree with them. I agree with every single thing that needs to be done here. And one of the things that I wish, or that I want to be more emphasized, is just that idea, our physical footprint. You know, FADS said it themselves in their report to us. When you think about how we fund everything education, I think Member Certain said that the other meeting, the state gives us an allowance. And then we ask the local electorate, you know, for a bigger allowance for certain things, but the way we've asked the local electorate doesn't really give us a lot of flexibility to do things like increase teacher salaries. Those funds are locked to things like capital, to things like music, art. So, you know, when I'm looking at this now, everything's part of some big pie, and I believe it was Mr. Gomez who said this just now, how our budget reflects our priorities. And when you look at how we've built budgets these past 10 years and everything, you can see what the priorities are. And it's not in instruction, it's not in teachers. When you look at some of the better districts out there, they put a lot of their budget toward instruction, toward teachers, into the classroom, 60% or above. We don't. Ours is in the 50s. So I'd love to, as we do this rework and we do this organization and we change how Alachua County Public Schools works better in the future, I would also love us to see that, to make sure that the ratio of what we're spending money on is in the classroom and is in our teachers. So that's me.
Thank you, Mr. Vu.
So Dr. Rockwell, I'm just throw in a couple of comments for people. So rezoning, absolutely, that is something that's what we do need to do, reduce that footprint, there's no question, but also jumping too quick on that would have caused the problem. You already just mentioned it, Newberry. We would have done one thing and then we'd be redoing it, and that puts us in a bad position. Not only that, it's also every other week I run into another community member who has another idea of what they want to use our buildings for. So rezoning is not just rezoning, and number one, most importantly, we need to change our vernacular. We're not rezoning just for finances. You rezone for one major reason. It's the economy of scales of resources for children, because when they sit so spread out, you don't have that maximizing effect. So that's really why we want to rezone. So I just want to be sure that our public gets gets a little more educated, and you wouldn't know that if we didn't say it. So this is the night I'm starting to say these things. You don't rezone just for finances. You rezone with the number one premise that it is the better thing for kids that they're together, so therefore they generate more resources as they're together. Then the second benefit is absolutely a financial benefit. That's the first thing. The second thing is the unbelievable number of people that have come at me, and I haven't even been here that long, about, well, we want to have affordable housing in your schools. We want to have these homeless people that are on the streets or in a different place. We want them all to be together so that they can have a better education. I've already heard like 7 or 8 uses, and that's just the people that came and got me, right? You know, so it's not just a rezoning, resources for kids first, financial second, but then what's best for our community? Because it might be that we might need to look at some of these facilities that are used for other people for other purposes. So there's actually a third component that nobody is really kind of seeing. It's a way bigger picture than just our rezoning. And then fully on board with transparency. I hope that's what you see that we're starting to do. I want to use an example. We have never had budget presentations as clear and concise as we've had this year. So Gabby, I want to thank you. She's had a lot of people's input. Your attorney, David Delaney, he was a big help with us getting those down too, because it's important to me personally as the superintendent, you don't hear me talk like that, that when we put things out, anybody can understand it. So I want to give you the example. Today when TV 20 interviewed me, the first thing the reporter said is, Dr. Patton, I want to thank your district. I reviewed your budget pages that we have from the budget, and she said I could actually follow every single thing. And it was very clearly marked up, down, where's the problem, where's our gap spending, in like 7 or 8 slides. So I do want to say I think we're being very transparent with that. It's not a guessing game, and one of the things I hope to do while I'm here is to leave systems in place, and I would hope that all we do is keep improving those budget pages and don't present 72 that nobody can follow. But I thought that really made my day to hear somebody that has no knowledge really about what we're doing be able to follow that. You know, I think that what we could do, because I still heard it again tonight, people are very I heard it here even by presenters here that I know are great people here that work for us, and they're still using the wrong vernacular, so we have to help clean that up. I am not into a whole committee because you're educating 8 people. We need to find ways to educate the community. So like that budget presentation educated the community. I want to ensure that it sits on our website so people can find that. I'm not sure if it is, so I'll find that out. But I think we need to increase that just a couple of more slides just to be sure that people understand when they hear capital, what does capital mean? That cannot be used for salaries. I just think if it's in writing, then people can follow that one step better. So I think we can improve that just a little bit better, and then we'll get that posted too, along with that whole budget presentation, because it's not a secret, and then it's very clear as to what can be done, what can't be done. And I'm very happy to take our plan that we have, and some we have definitive numbers for positions that went unfilled. We know what those dollars are. We also know, as we talked last week, we could go back and find when did a position just close, somebody retired out of that spot last week, so what is that from last week until June 30th? So we can do many of those items, we can give a pretty rough idea of what it would be, so happy to do that too, because we're not, I'm also proud of staff because I've listened to that we've dipped under 5 and you don't get a plan. So I'm very happy that the second that we dipped under 5, we turned around within a week at the first board meeting since we had it, that you have a plan so we can help improve that. So always happy to be transparent as best as we can. I think that's the way you always should be. I don't, whatever happened in the past, happened in the past. I can account for when I sit here. So happy to do that. Thank you again. I just want the public to know I appreciate these 4 board members. They have met with me every single week. That's what I asked them to do, and they have. When they have questions, they let me know. I just, again, say thank you. When I watched board meetings coming in to take this job or not, I wouldn't say that was always the case. So I say thank you. It takes time out of your world, too, to do that. So I appreciate it. Many of you I call late into the night, on the weekends. You answer the calls. You send me things. I just say thank you, because we couldn't make the progress we've made made, or I feel we've made in this short period of time without that. And I also continue to say thank you for sending me your problems. Most people don't want problems. I do, because I can solve them quicker and find the answers. And like I think one of you said tonight, may not be what you want to hear, but at least you hear an answer to the question. So just say I thank you. I thank the public for taking your time to answer things, because that helps me to say, let's make that budget papers that even the news reporter can follow good, and we can make it one step better, because I still hear that people are not understanding where's capital and what can be spent, and it can't be spent on raises. When I heard that number, $18 million, that, oh, we have for raises, no, we don't. Those are definitely, although, and I don't blame someone for thinking the word supplies is attached to it, so I think, as a board member said to me today, I think when people hear supplies, they think Xerox paper. Can we use less Xerox? No, those are the AP funds. They're the Cambridge funds. They're the athletic supplements for coaches. All of those dollars are truly captured, so I know that our budget head, she will be sure tomorrow the whole week is going so fast. She's going to go through that with the union too, so that they understand there's not $18 million sitting there. If there was, that we could spend, that's not already, and some of those are grants, some of those are donations that people have had that are very set. So we want to be sure you do know those kind of things, because certainly if we had extra money to do things, we would be doing that. But we can be even clearer with that. So just so they know that the union will hear that explanation tomorrow too. So thank you for letting me just share some overall comments.
Thank you, Dr. Patton. All right, so the motion on the floor is to adopt the budget recovery plan. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And before citizen input, I'd like to ask our student representative if she has any input, and we may need to pass her a mic. I don't see one at that table. Mr. Spilius, can you pass your mic to our student representative, please? Thank you.
Good evening. So the Amplified Student Voice Coalition extended last month's survey window. High school students were able to prioritize topics previously determined by students. So this survey resulted in the following 4 areas for us to follow up on: developing positive teacher-student relationships, college and career preparedness, school-wide positive incentives, and counseling support and interventions for vaping. We asked students 3 questions in our follow-up survey. Which of the 4 topics is most important to you? What are some of your ideas on how to improve this area? And what are some ways you think your school or district can help improve this area? So far, the topic showing the most interest is college and career preparedness. One of our goals is to support the 4th annual ACPS College Boot Camp experience for rising juniors and seniors at Santa Fe College over the summer, tentatively scheduled for June 2025. The boot camp was created based on student feedback from student government groups from each high school. We are currently planning leadership and college and career-focused field trips, and more information about our trips will be shared at the next board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that update. Board members, do you have any comments or questions? Ms. Surden.
Would you repeat the date, please?
The date for when?
The boot camp,
The boot camp is tentatively scheduled for June 2025. It doesn't specify a date.
Okay. I was just trying to write it down. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say that we've had student representatives in the past, but I have to say that you come so prepared and with real input, and I mean, developing surveys, data, and these are things we can actually have action on. I mean, we really, yeah.
Well, thank you, and thank you for Amplified for helping me with this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing like a vaping intervention, and like school-wide incentives that fits right in with our district's PBIS programs. And, that's something that hearing students say that that's something they want as well. It solidifies that that's a good goal for us to have as a district and something we need to continue to work on and improve. So I really, really appreciate you coming with so much information and preparation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right, now on to citizen input. Mr. Foote, do we have any callers?
Caller, please state your name. You have 3 minutes with the board.
Hi, my name is Clarissa Barcia, and I am calling about the math teacher and how she brought up the rumors, and I am so over the newspaper people bringing up rumors, first of all. So I'm glad she just brought up the word rumors, because that needs to be nipped in the bud. I'm over it, sick of it, done with it. Also, thank you for bringing up how these rumors, because everybody hears all these numbers, all these things without a display. And I think a display would also help solve a lot of these issues where money this, money that, and all of that. Because then we could actually visibly see, and some people are visual learners. I have another comment about the black gentleman, the taller guy. I'm 4'11" when I met him, he was tall. Anyways, we wanted to see how the gains and 75%, but he doesn't understand that when you go in a 504 meeting or an IP meeting, that is how you measure things, is gains and 75% and this and that. He also brought up that how are we going to do this with IEPs and da-da-da-da-da-da. Listen, the IEPs are taken care of because before the end of the year, we meet with the teachers, we get a plan for our IEP children, because I have already gotten mine. Plus, if you are on top of things, you get emails from teachers regularly. Also, those incentives that y'all are doing, I love them, they're amazing. My daughter was so far behind, it was not even funny. Now she's in the 6th grade, she's in advanced classes, making straight A's at Kanaka Hall. Straight A's. The teachers there that she has are amazing. She's behind. She's so far behind at 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. She's in advanced classes because of those incentives. She got workbooks during the summer. She did them. And I made her return those workbooks after the summer so that those teachers knew that she was doing her work to catch up, to learn, to educate herself, to catch up. Because I wanted her to be the best she could. And her therapist outside of school would help her and work with her with those workbooks. They were amazing, and I'm thankful for them as a parent. I thank you, and I hope you all continue that program because it was amazing. And I just bit my cheek. I'm sorry. Thank y'all. Dr. Patton, you're amazing. I wanted to not like you, but you're amazing, and I love what you're doing with the school. Keep up your amazing work. Board, y'all are working together amazingly. I appreciate it all. Thank you. I love you. I hope you have a great night.
Caller, please state your name. You have 3 minutes with the board.
Hi, yes. My name is Tina Days, and I've just been listening to the meeting, and I been hearing some revisionist history going on. Now, I heard several school board members talk about Superintendent Andrews took his bag and ran. That's not exactly what happened. There was 3 of y'all on the dais actively campaign against this Superintendent Andrews during the election, saying y'all were going to get rid of the man, y'all wanted a new superintendent. So then when that happened, and then some of y'all even disparaged the man right in front of the man. Say, do y'all think he would actually want to work there in that environment? I know I wouldn't. So he did not take his bag and ran. He was forced to run. That is a revisionist history. Now, I've been hearing a whole lot about money. Money. Now, where are we going to get the money for the new superintendent search? Where is that money going to come from? Now, all of a sudden, since that was the whole campaign issue, especially since some of y'all turned against the former chairperson because she didn't go along with doing a whole new superintendent search. Why not we not going to hear about that? Where's that money going to come from? So are y'all going to prioritize the superintendent search or giving the teacher a raise? I don't see how you're going to be able to do both. And this should not have even been on the table. Y'all had a good superintendent there. Thank you very much.
Ms. Johnson.
Madam Chair, our first three speakers are Armando Grundy Gomez, Oliver Flanagan, and Gina Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it 50 seconds? I thought you were going to hire me today. Madam Chair, Armando Grundy Gomez. What I wanted to talk to you all about is you all had a presentation at your last meeting and somebody wanted to build a partnership with you. And I want to have a conversation about that partnership. That partnership that you had from the city of Gainesville is important to unpack. The person that's the subject matter expert, you're looking at him right here. And I know some of you all met with some city commissioners, and some of the ones that you have met with had nothing, that has never sat there, never been involved. When it came to 8th and Waldo, the person that is, you're talking to him. The person that spent his own money on studies, the person that did civil engineering, you're talking to him. The person that looked at the project, that project has been going on since 2017. The city has had the ability, the city of Gainesville, and I want you to hear me. I don't care whether it's the mayor that's currently there, the city manager that's currently there, or any of the city commissioners that come up here and talk to you. This goes back to the city manager, Anthony Lyons, in 2017. That's a fact. I was on the GCRA board for 5 years. The person that did the traveling to Birmingham to look at the study, to have the facts, I did it. And I know some people over there in the crowd are not necessarily saying, oh my God, here he goes again. The facts are the facts. They could have spent the $30 million. You want to take 20% out of your capital budget and say, and I actually know what capital is, so I don't need an explanation. I know what capital overlay is. You want to take 20% of your capital budget and basically say, I want to buy a football stadium, or I want to go down to Orlando and see how we can build something magnificent. And you aren't doing what your first job is. The city of Gainesville could have paid for that football stadium. The GCRA dollars were for 2019 to 2029 and were supposed to go to East Gainesville. Please tell me where they spent them from. Well, we can see them. Once again, when you look at a budget, you tell them what they value. They spent the money on street eateries in downtown. Is that in East Gainesville? I don't know. To some people it might be. Doesn't look like it. I live in East Gainesville. It's not. Or I'm sorry, East Side. It's not. Once again, they could have paid $30 million 20 times over, and they're going to tell you to spend it. And then let's go back and extrapolate something else. This is the same city of Gainesville that lost their utility because they spend money recklessly. That's not popular for some people. Facts are a funny feeling. They're going to try to convince us that 2 + 2 is 105 in Alachua County. Now, maybe in some parts of Alachua County arithmetic, that's true, but everywhere else in the world, it's not. So I want the ones of you that voted for that simply because my friend was up here, because it might have been a famous name, and some people like that name as a commissioner because she came up here, and they smile at you and you voted for it because of a name or your friendship with them. It's shameful. You're going to spend 20% of your capital budget of $150 million on a stadium you can't afford, and you're not even doing what you're supposed to do to educate our children. Sports is secondary. A child that can't read causes further problems. Stick to what you do better. Don't buy that football stadium. They should owe it. And don't even buy the land either.
Hey, Oliver Flanagan. I just wanted to quickly apologize because I was a bit disrespectful earlier, and I do genuinely value what you'll have to say. But I do appreciate that transparency when we're talking about where'd the money go, what happened, and everything. I do really appreciate that transparency. A large problem here is there's a really big lack of communication, both with the public, with students, and we see kind of that stuff going around about our own teachers, and with teachers themselves. Because it's definitely, if I were working a job and then that raise that I knew at least that's my minimum that I'm going to get randomly dropped down by a whole 0.5%, I'd be concerned. I'd want to know where that money went. went and where it come from. So that needs to be more transparent than at a board meeting that not everyone can make it to, or not everyone has the time to pick through and watch 2 or 3 hours of footage. That needs to be very open and transparent information to your staff and to your community and to your students, because we do care and we do look and we do listen. Not all of us, but I also try to be involved as I can. I also want to say a quick appreciation to Dr. Patton, because I want to say, I'm not going to name names, but previous superintendents, I haven't seen him say a word. And you've been here and you've been speaking and being very transparent on each item here at this meeting, and I do really appreciate that. But I want to call out again, we have had poor financial decisions, but I don't want to continue that as well. So everything kind of concerns here about budget as well. I appreciate that we're communicating about that and we're talking about how we can spend that a bit wiser and what's necessary and what's not, what's causing improvements and what's not. We need to have that be open. We need more budget meetings. We need that budget to be transparent with the local citizens. We need that to be transparent with the local teachers. So let's have those things. Let's have things available on the website. Let's have detailed budget plans that have definitions and have clear goals and things in mind, where the average citizen can read it and it's not jargon that you have to push through. That's difficult to read and not everyone has time to read, because you have teachers that have hours and hours and hours upon work they have to do each and every day just to get that by. Especially if you have additional, as I saw someone mention earlier, additional workshops or things planned on teacher workdays where teachers also have to get through grades. So there's just so much work that teachers have to do outside of that not everyone has time to come and sit in here. Like, teachers that have taken that valuable time to come do so and not have the time to sift through and try to figure all these things out. These need to be upfront. They need to be properly explained. They need to be summarized properly, because I fear your staff would be a little bit less mad if they knew exactly where that money is coming from, and that's actually something you cannot physically do. I still hope that the raise can go up at least back to 1.6% if there's any way to make it work, but I do understand if it's not, because if the money's not there, we can't make it get there. But I appreciate that the board is doing everything in your power, and I hope you're doing everything in your power to make that happen, and to at least get it a little higher than it is now, because 1% is not everything. And just on the step increases real quick, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, step increases don't always apply to older teachers or people who have been in those positions for a very long time or have that grandfather contract. So they aren't actually getting those step increases as well, so they're just not getting a raise at all. And I could be wrong in that. I want to make that very clear, but that's what I personally heard. And that I don't, because a lot of my teachers have been in those positions for a long time, especially out at Santa Fe High School, and I wouldn't want them to receive no raise at all as well.
Gina Rivera again. I just want to say how impressive our young people are in this county. When I was 17, I could tell you about the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. I could not come speak at a school board meeting. So phenomenal. Also our student representative. I mean, I had to shout her out, because honestly, to be that eloquent and to be so dedicated at your age and see what the issues in your community are and already be involved, the world is in good hands, and not just with Allstate. Okay. Humor is how I cope, people. Okay, so I have several questions that I want to put out there just so they can be on the record, and maybe I can get these answers later. I don't know what that Newberry charter thing is still a thing. I thought we had nipped that in the bud with the vote of no from the people. So I wanted to see if somebody could explain to me why we're still considering even giving these people a voice to speak about what they want when the people of that town have already voted no. So I would like that to die already, please. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to discuss, and like I said, I'm hoping you can answer that for me, but Dr. Patton, you mentioned having the clear presentation somewhere. Yes, I would love that to be available on our school board website, somewhere where in your updates that I have been reading, by the way, I know one came out recently, to put, hey, here's the link of that presentation that we were talking about at the school board, so that the general public can have access to it. And I am not familiar on how to read a budget sheet that clearly. I teach elementary school math, so I can tell you how to work fractions, but not that way. So if you could have it even more simple and broken down with even a glossary of terms, this is what this means. Somebody on the phone said, yeah, let's clear up the rumor mill. Rumors go away when we have the information. So if we can have it defined, that would be great. The other thing, in that same presentation, I would love to see when you define where all the money is, also put your goals. What are you using? These are the goals for these funds. This is what our number one priority is. This is not what the priority is. So sorry, we're not going to spend it on this. I like clear yeses and nos. So I would love to see that. The last thing, another rumor that's going around that I want to clear up is that an idea that was put out there to eliminate some of our deficit would be to eliminate BRTs in elementary schools. And I just wanted to make sure that, at least from me, you could hear. We cannot have that happen. We have so many behavior issues, then to eliminate that position and put one more burden on the teacher would be the straw that broke the camel's back. So I'm advocating to keep our BRTs in our schools because we definitely need those. Please don't make those go away. And then Dr. Patton, I will be sending you an email soon, but I would love to get to talk to you one-on-one someday. I think you're an asset that we need in this county, and I want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Prescott Coles.
Hello, good evening, board members. My name is Prescott Coles. I'm a citizen of Alachua County, former district employee, and a handful of schools and sites. I wanted to offer some specific recommendations. I had a prior meeting, so I wasn't able to catch all of the discussion, but I did want to reference a few specific strategies that I think would help with some of the challenges, not including this microphone. So there's other groups we can learn from, specifically locally. The city of Gainesville has a guide, it's a neighbor's guide to meetings. It walks through someone who's never been to a school board meeting, what it's like to present, what each of the people sitting up there does, how to give the comments, what a consent agenda is. I think something like that for the school board will help the citizens get more engaged. Also locally, I'd look at Alachua County. They have an open finance portal. You can go in and see every single dollar that they spend across every department, every single check they cut. There's no reason that we can't do the exact same thing. Obviously, the numbers aren't going to be as pretty, but there's, in our community, the resources and expertise exists to show where the dollars are going. So ask their staff how they do it. Another strategy that they use is right after their meetings, they have their communication staff put out meeting summaries. So they don't wait until you guys vote on what the meeting minutes are, because no one's going to follow those. There are highlights that come out of this conversation. Like Oliver said, people aren't going to sit and watch hours and hours of meetings. So whatever the highlights are, you share those ahead of time that help tell your story, whether it's positive or negative, but help it be accessible. Another resource, board docs that you use for sharing your agendas and your minutes. Other school districts use those for their committees as well. So that way, if there's a search feature and someone's looking for some kind of information, they find not just the school board's resources, but the district advisory council, the school health advisory council, teacher advisory council. We can have our board committees on there so the resources are all in one place. Lastly, I'd also recommend looking at your own website from 20 years ago. On the Wayback Machine, which if you don't know what it is, Google it, you can see what previous boards' minutes looked like. Some of their budget books from 20 years ago are very detailed, better than we've had in recent years. And you can look at the minutes and see what those boards' discussions were. Like in 2008, there was a big financial crisis. You're able to look at their resources, the hard discussions that they had. Lastly, recommendation would be our ESC parent survey. Last year, our district participation rate was 5.7%. That's a state survey that's for all ESC parents. I recommend getting above 5.7% participation. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So moving on to board member and superintendent requests. Real quickly, I did want to answer Ms. Rivera's question about the charter. So the charter application was submitted despite the fact that the vote was certified as failing to the State Charter Review Board. The State Charter Review Board approved the charter and basically said that statute would trump board education rules, and the vote did not fail, is basically what they said. Ms. Surden was there. She spoke at a previous board meeting about what occurred then, so she can correct me if I got any of this wrong. But basically, we submitted an appeal letter to the state. We are waiting to hear back from them on that. But at this time, the charter was approved, and we have to plan for fall of 2026. Is there anything else from anyone on the dais? Mr. Vu.
Stop doing that. I do need to follow up. I would like to follow up on what something Citizen Gomez said, especially when it comes to Citizens Field. I know I was the lone vote in no, and I really just do want to follow up. I do feel like it was really premature of us as a board, just to my colleagues, before we even know whether, what the plan is for our capital, before the consultant even comes back on schools like Hawthorne and what the even half-cent projects look like for the coming decade. These are questions we still don't know. And so I really do feel like we need to make sure that we can provide what our basic necessities are for our students. And that's, again, schools that are nice, schools where HVAC runs well, where they have heat, where they have air conditioning, where I'm not worried about, things in the ceiling I can't see, things in the carpet I can't see. And I'm just not convinced we're there at all. I honestly don't even think we're anywhere close to that, and envisioning how long that's going to take. And everything outside of that, to me, seems really unnecessary. So I'd really like to, again, just remind my colleagues of what I think the central mission is, and what I think the people of our community think the central mission is, and it really is nice schools where our kids feel safe, where they don't get sick going to, that educate them. And our teachers deserve that too. Something else too, we already talked about the AI policy, but this is something I talked about too, and I know, I forgot who commented on it in the audience, but I think a citizen budget review board would be something that would really be helpful to us, is because if we're trying to create systems that exist beyond any of us here on the dais, because we all have term limits, Cam Patton's not going to be with us forever, so what really are those mechanisms that keep us in check, or any future board in check? Because we've already seen what happens. A lot of the times, we come in, we don't even have an education background, but even if we do, everything that you have to do as a board member is so different. The new laws, the way accounting works, the way funding works, it's a catch-up game. And it's, if not for my own head start of having worked in this system, I don't know how long it would truly take somebody to catch up to do the job they're supposed to do. It's minimum 6 months. It's most likely a year or two until someone truly feels comfortable. And in that time, there needs to be something else, in my opinion. And then this is something I really would like to put to my colleagues. We used to do a climate survey every year in this district. It's something I think is really important. Our district never did the correct thing with it. They gave it, and then here's the results, and then nothing. No response, no interpretation, and right now, I'm not even aware of any plans to give one. I've talked about it a lot. But this is where I truly feel like it's important, and not just to do it, but then take that next step that any responsible organization does and respond. Here's what you all said. Here's why that's concerning. Here's what we want to do about it. Here's how you'll know that we're doing something about it. This is not outside the box. It's not something that I'm making up. It's something any responsible organization already does. And so I would just like to put it to my colleagues, is this something you feel like we need, even as a board, to understand, and for staff to understand what students, parents, teachers are feeling? Because when we look at it in the past, it's really clear that a lot of these problems we're dealing with now, when it comes to teacher retention, when it comes to how the job satisfaction, how people feel in our schools from the student, parent, teacher level, all these problems we're dealing with right now can be seen in this data. This increasing dissatisfaction among everybody. So I'd just love to hear what you all have to say before I say anything else.
So I support doing the climate survey. I actually looked at that data in the past and tried to discuss it with the previous superintendent. I think that is important information, so I support doing that. Back to Citizens Field, all the board voted to do was to give Dr. Patton the authority to explore possibilities. We haven't made any actual decisions. We haven't allocated any funds. We haven't signed any contracts or made any partnerships. I just want to make that very clear. There isn't even an actual dollar sign assigned to it. That $30 million number to me is like absolutely absurd. Other school districts have built stadiums for half that or less. And the reality is, I'm going to quote Dr. Patton here. She said this to me, and it made so much sense to me. We have students who are struggling academically. I'm not going to argue that, but what keeps a student coming to school every day? For some students, it's their music class. For some students, it's drama. For some students, it's art. For a lot of our students, it's athletics. And so we're looking at having 3 high schools with nowhere to play, and unfortunately, 2 of those 3 high schools don't have space on their campus to even have even a small stadium. GHS doesn't have the space, and Buchholz has some watershed issues that would make it very difficult to put a stadium there, despite the fact that a previous board member thought we could build one. That it would have been extremely, extremely costly. There's a lake right behind there that there were some changes made to the Buchholz property before I joined the board that resulted in flooding issues and a lawsuit, and it was an issue. So, you know, we do have to, I mean, yes, we don't legally have to have a place for our kids to play football, but that's your football team, your marching band, your dance team, your color guard, you know, that's a lot of kids who are motivated to come to school for that. And so, you know, we do have an obligation to support that. And I understand when we say we got kids who can't read, how can we invest money in athletics? It's, well, number one, it is a different pot of money, but number two.
We gotta define the pots of money again.
But I mean,
Got it.
you know, number two, I mean, that is the pot of money that fixes HVACs and roofs. So that is an important point, which we've got to fix, but we do have to think about what happens if we can't. The most cost-effective way for us to have a sports facility is to have some sort of partnership with the city. Ideally, they would do it, and we would continue to pay them a very small amount of rent and cover maintenance like we've been doing for the last, you know, the record, they say 40 years, but that's just the current contract. There was a partnership even before that. So, but regardless, the most cost-effective path forward is some sort of partnership with the city, and all we voted for as a board was to give Dr. Patton the authority to explore broadly what that partnership could potentially look like. I just want to make that very clear. And I have one more thing. Dr. Patton works really hard, and she gets a lot of criticism just because, again, the leader is the leader. And I just want to say, a district administrator who I've known for decades came to me to tell me that at their last secondary principals meeting, the principals brought up concerns about the ACT testing and how there had been a lot of issues with kids logging on, computers not being updated, and that's for a lot of these kids their only chance to take a test that allows them to either graduate with a concurrent score or potentially get into college. And during the lunch break, Dr. Patton got our tech and testing people together. They had a working lunch, and they came back after lunch with a solution and a plan to do a call center, testing center, and the infrastructure test she mentioned earlier to make sure that our IT infrastructure can handle all of our students logging on at once before PM3. And this staff member said, I've been with this district for decades, through many, many superintendents, and I've never had one do that. Hear a problem and immediately work to solve it. And so, thank you, Dr. Patton.
You mean about the climate? I'm okay with the climate survey. For that, and Dr. Rockwell has already said what happened with Citizens Field. I don't think anything else needs to be said about that.
So that question then is to Dr. Patton's team. what have the discussions been and what are the plans around that? Because, you know, ideally, we should be implementing some survey, and it's the same survey every year, so we can compare it year over year. And so the board, the committee can really understand what people are seeing and how they're feeling and what they're thinking.
Are you looking for me to say we're going to do it? We are, so. Is that
We are, yes. Yeah, I'm looking to say, because it wasn't sure, you know, wasn't something that was set in stone. I'd love that to be set in stone. So
Well, it should be an annual survey. Did it in Miami, 25 years. We had it in Collier, 12 years. And so I don't know why we don't, and we try and do what you just mentioned too. You try and use the same questions, because if you change them every year, that's a problem. I will tell you too, though, that we had to back them down a little, because in Collier, some folks want to do it like 4 times a year. I said, then it's survey fatigue. So it is right, you know, and if you can do it at just the same time pretty much every year, you just get a different
right, and then
ability to measure things.
And whether or not, I know there's feedback, sorry, everybody. And then whether or not we utilize an outside vendor and inside, I know when the district stopped paying for an outside vendor, we did create one in-house, so that exists somewhere in our IT cloud, and I'm sure it's out there. And so even then, it could just literally be plug and play if we're okay with the questions the way they are, or even just a great place to start to refine them. And I'd love to make sure, too, that we're capturing all the key stakeholders, our school staff, our district staff, our students, and our families.
Right.
Let's make sure.
What was your last category?
Families,
Right.
parents,
Sorry.
guardians.
Dr. McNeely, did you have anything?
Madam Chair, I appreciate your comments that you made for the superintendent. I think the entire staff, including Dr. Patton, and the entire staff that we have should be always commended for the amount of work that they have to do, not want to do, but have to do. And certainly, I'm looking at that end of the dais to this end of the dais with Attorney Spillis and coming on up. Everybody is working diligently and totally giving of themselves. So I appreciate you stating what you needed to say about the superintendent, but including the entire staff of Alachua County Public Schools. I don't think that we say enough about the folk who are in the trenches when we are in our beds. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for that, Dr. McNeely. We have amazing staff here. Does anyone else have anything? Then this meeting is adjourned at 8:41 p.m.